Hello and welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
And we're coming to you within minutes of the Chauvin trial verdict. He was found guilty on all 3 counts. There's a lot to unpack here. Yes, there can be some celebration in this time that this murderer was convicted. I don't think either of us want to take celebration away from people. To see a murderer of such an extreme case go to prison or be found guilty, obviously, it means a lot to a lot of people. So I don't think our goal is not to take that away, but our goal is to dig a little deeper as to what the larger issues are. And I think there's a lot of larger issues that need to be talked about here, which are not, they're getting touched on mainstream media, but they're not really getting into them.
No, and I kind of want to start off this conversation with a tweet from Sister Song, which is an organization of women in color. And they tweeted, as they were waiting for the verdict, they tweeted, quote, "As we wait for a verdict, let's be clear. 1, a carceral system will never truly bring justice to our communities. 2, we must rebuild the whole damn thing to center human rights. And 3, real justice would mean George Floyd could be home tonight with his fiancée and his daughter." And I think that this, it's really important that we look at this through an abolitionist lens, that we look at this through the understanding that the whole time that this trial was ongoing, the defense and really the corporate media tried to frame this like Chauvin is one. By the way, can I just take a moment to say that I think it's very apt that his last name is almost chauvinist? Has anybody else highlighted that? Anyway,
I'm sure people have highlighted that, but it's amazing his name's not racist or something.
It's like Bernie Madoff, who just recently died. It's like, really? Are the I feel that these are the moments where I'm almost certain I'm living in a simulation.
Yeah, Jamie Dimon.
Right. Anyway, so this was framed in the he's just a bad egg or a bad seed or a bad apple or whatever the fuck, and the institution as a whole is obviously going to be held accountable for this. And we want to work with the community policing, and the police are here and all of that bullshit was how this was framed. And that is just vehemently untrue. And we've talked about this so many times on the podcast, so I don't want to hammer it home. But an institution that's born from slave patrols cannot be reformed into something that serves and protects the people. This institution was born and evolved for 2 reasons, predominantly to ensure the continued oppression and enslavement of black bodies. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, to ensure the continued oppression and the stratification of the class system, to literally serve and protect the interests of the ruling class. There's nothing you can do to reform that out of it. It's like saying that I'd like to reform my DNA out of my body. You can't fucking extract it. It is who they are.
And people, you mentioned the class structure. People point to the fact that is going on sometimes to say, look, it's not racist. Look at how many white people they arrest. They actually kill more white people each year than black people. Yes, but the white people are usually waving guns or knives, and the black people are usually unarmed. On top of that, black people, as a percentage of the population, are still killed far more than that percentage. But my point is just that, there's 2 things going on here. There's the incredible racism of the policing system and also their job as cementing the class structure. So, yes, they do harm poor people a lot, and we should talk about that as well. But also, far more likely if you're black. And then if you're a black poor person, oh, man, that's the worst scenario. But something I wanted to say, which you're kind of getting at because you're talking beyond what is allowed on our mainstream airwaves. I turned on CNN when they were airing this verdict just a few minutes ago. I wanted to see how they talked about it, and of course they did and I'm maybe this is not a bad thing, but they did we're going to cover our asses by having multiple black people on this for this minute. We won't have multiple black hosts throughout the day, but for a few minutes we'll have a few black people on. So it's Van Jones and another woman I didn't know. But anyway, they went on to kind of define the Overton window, define the parameters of the Overton window. Now, in this scenario, and for those who don't know, the Overton window, that's basically the area of allowable thought or debate on your mainstream corporate airwaves. You can't go beyond it. You can't question capitalism, for example. So Van Jones goes, all we're asking for, and he's basically celebrating the Chauvin verdict. He's saying this is the correct verdict. This man killed another person live on television. On video. And so he's saying, yes, absolutely. Thank goodness we got this guilty verdict. But then he goes on to say, all we're asking for is for police to obey the law. That is it. And he kind of sets that as the left parameter of the Overton window. As if anyone who's left-wing on television, all they're asking is for police to obey the law. There is no questioning of the policing system beyond just that. There's no questioning of these quote-unquote laws that, where black people are arrested for quote-unquote loitering, or they're pulled over far more frequently for speeding, or their license plate is missing a screw, or whatever the fuck. All of that's quote-unquote obeying the law. So it's a bullshit stance, but it kind of defines where the edge of the Overton window is. This is as left-wing as you can be, demanding police obey the law.
Right. And, lest we forget, the slave patrols were acting legally. So the idea that just because something's legal means that it is just, and that it is, based on human rights and liberation is a fucking joke. And, we're going to get into some new legislation that is atrocious in a minute, but there is so much horrendous legislation that, again, like as you pointed out, Lee, targets specifically BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, and then, of course, people who go out and try to fight for justice, like critical infrastructure bills that target people who try to block the construction of pipelines or things like that. So the laws are there, like the police, to serve and protect the ruling class. So again, it is so important that we look at this through an abolitionist lens. And like Lee said earlier, I'm not saying everybody stay home and be grumpy pants tonight. If there's like some black joy shit happening where you are, I say like go and, be a part of it. If you're white, like, don't jump into the black joy. That's not for you. I'm just saying, like, go out and be there in support of your black comrades, your black neighbors, and definitely, like, uplift this moment, because we should recognize that this moment would not have been possible without the work of the people who organized around George Floyd's death and after his murder. So I think that is important to highlight, but after you come home from celebrating or, supporting your friends, understand that the work continues, because the broader lens around this moment in history is the movement. It's the movement to abolish the police. It's the movement to abolish the white supremacist systemic structures that oppress. So I think that's just like a really important thing to keep in mind as we, as we like have that little moment of woohoo.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they were reading a letter from one of George Floyd's family members, saying how excited and pleased they were with the verdict. And one of the things that they said was, this is a turning point in history. And my feeling was, it depends on whether this is a turning point in history. We can keep going on down the same road, keep with the racist police system that if you look at the budget of American police and you put it on a list of countries' military budgets, it's the third largest in the world. Mm-hmm. If you counted our police as a military, it has the third largest budget in the world. The first being our U.S. military. The second is like,
China,
Russia, China, and then...
No, Russia's further down.
Oh, Russia's further down. Yeah. India's next after ours. But so, yeah, it's basically China and then our police. So we get 2 spots on the list of largest military budgets. But... Yeah, so we can keep going down this path, and then this will not be a turning point in history. This will be same old shit. We got one cop locked up. And I also think people have to take a step back and realize the Herculean efforts it took to get a guilty verdict in this case. So between 2005 and 2019, 3 police officers, and we don't know about the appeals process yet for Chauvin, but 3 police officers were ultimately convicted of the largest, highest charge of murder. 3 out of 15,000 or whatever people killed in America. So honestly, it's like this only happens when you have an entire country furious, storming the streets. That's when you see a guilty verdict like this. But it's incredibly rare. This is the exception that proves the rule, rather than, at least so far, showing that we have somehow turned a corner.
Right. And again, like, not throwing this out there as some sort of Debbie Downer news flash, more so to, again, put this in context. It is so important to recognize where we are and what kind of system we are living with. The system does not hand out justice like this, and it's so I think we have to, again, like, we have to put this in context and understand that this moment is just a smaller piece of the larger movement that has to continue with regards to abolition of the police and of the structures of white supremacy.
And speaking of white supremacy, meanwhile, in Florida, right-wing lunatic Governor DeSantis passed a what he calls an anti-riot bill, but an anti-riot bill that allows for several things. One of them is it allows basically anybody to drive through, which could effectively kill protesters. So you are now in Florida allowed basically to drive through protesters. And when he was signing it, he goes, could you imagine you work hard all day long and then you're trying to get home and people are blocking traffic, blocking the road? There needs to be strict repercussions for doing that. And it's like, murder is the repercussion. I mean, it's so fucking insane.
Well, and
there's several other things in the bill as well. But yeah.
Again, this is something that I'm always reminded when people give me shit because I've locked down on a freeway before, and I've blocked traffic in city streets, and I've gotten shit from people before being like, that is so rude. And by the way, they're white people. And I just, like, it's so mind-boggling to me that you can sit there and think and then, like, say out loud through your stupid fucking face hole that your slight inconvenience, that you're late to fucking watch Seinfeld or whatever the fuck people do these days, to watch Seinfeld. I just aged myself, by the way. To watch Seinfeld and eat fucking Doritos. That is more important than the continued murder.
You should have said Queen's Gambit.
The what now?
Yep.
Okay. I have no idea what that is. That is more important, that your slight inconvenience is more important than the continued murder of human beings. And I'm reminded of, this was several years ago, or like 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know. Time is it feels like a fucking accordion right now. But there was a Black Lives Matter protest here in D.C. that was blocking traffic, and folks started to honk because we'd been sitting there maybe for like 15, 20 minutes.
Is that why they're called honkies?
Oh my God, maybe. Should be. And this black woman just stood up and started yelling, I'm sorry that this is inconvenient for you, but they murdered my son. And thankfully, otherwise shit would have gotten out of control, but the honking stopped. And I really fucking hope that the person who heard that took a long fucking time to reflect on their little bitchiness.
Yep.
When this woman stood up to say, basically, how the fuck dare you? And so I feel like this is just a classic moment of that little moment amplified to its like extreme extent with this new bill in Florida, that the slight inconvenience of being held up is far more important than the continued murder of black and brown people at the hands of the state. And
of course, the real purpose is just to stop people from protesting, standing up against the state, which is allowing these killings and allowing the brutal police and everything else. This is just a long list of ways to stop it.
And then when you put this in contrast, I mentioned the critical infrastructure bill, which, for instance, you could, in some places, like in Louisiana, there's a critical infrastructure bill where you're looking at years and thousands of dollars in fines, years in prison and thousands of dollars in fines if you are standing on, let's say, a pipeline easement, which is the space where the construction will take place, or if you're standing on a, like a fracking pad or something like that, then it's not just trespassing, which, by the way, is already illegal. It is an amplified sentence. So just for standing there, right? Like, not even doing anything, not even like doing like a weird dance, just fucking standing there, you could be looking at years in prison. Meanwhile, somebody mows down, like what we saw in Charlottesville and that happened, again last summer during the uprisings, that people can drive into a crowd of people and they are given immunity under the law. Like, when you contrast those two things, and that's just an example, it isn't like, wow. I mean, I don't even know if fascism is a strong enough word.
Yeah.
Also, another little tidbit that's folded in to this like steaming pile of white supremacist fuckery is that this bill also protects Confederate monuments. Yeah. So I feel like they were just sitting around a table and like, what are all the most like white supremacist bullshit things we could cram into a bill?
Which again, it was already illegal to tear down a statue. People were doing it anyway because it's fucked up that we still have these racist statues up. And I say that as somebody who came from Richmond, Virginia, with the largest Robert E. Lee statue in the nation. And
as someone who's related to him.
And someone related to him and named after him and all that shit. But these are racist statues. They were put up for a racist intent. That was their whole purpose, was to solidify the white supremacist class structure. And so it's already illegal to pull down these statues. Many people have decided they don't care that it's illegal. Now, this bill makes it more illegal so that, and I don't know the details of the law, but basically so they can lock people up for longer for harming a statue. It's just such garbage, and I mean, it just screams of like Jim Crow era bullshit. Like,
amplified. Like, it's, yeah. It is absolutely grotesque. And I also think it's important to tell folks, always look for the domino effect on this. Just like we saw with the critical infrastructure bills.
The statue falling over, the domino.
God, I wish.
The domino effect.
I wish that was the domino effect I meant.
Actually, on Monument Avenue in Richmond, they were almost close enough that it could have worked.
Dude,
One
that'd be
after
great.
another.
By the way, if y'all haven't seen what the Lee statue looks like in Richmond, Virginia now, I highly recommend that you Google some pictures because it is beautiful now. It's like that shit should be in the Guggenheim. I'm just saying.
It was on the cover of National Geographic. It's been spray painted. It's pretty amazing.
It's beautiful.
It now houses the voices of the voiceless. So.
Yeah, it basically has been spray painted with the descendants of the people that Lee tried to kill, which is fucking awesome. So
really more tried to enslave than kill.
Well, yeah, I guess I was thinking of,
still horrific.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess I was, thinking of like the slaves that fought for the North.
Oh yes, they wanted to kill them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, that's in one of the lines of the national anthem. No, Star Spangled Banner. The Star Spangled Banner. The line that is not sung is about every it's like every he doesn't use the term slave, but it's like basically every servant who has turned and fighting for the other side, they
But the
may
na- the star-
they need to be executed.
But
Anyway,
the Star Spangled Banner was written in the
I'll look it up. You keep going.
it was written before the Civil War.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about Civil War.
Oh.
I was saying the slaves that turned and fought against their masters.
Oh, I thought you. Okay, I see.
We were talking about slaves, right?
Right, but I thought.
I wasn't talking about Civil War.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was. That's why I got confused. The timeline didn't make sense. Why now I lost my place. And you're just searching for something.
And I'm
on the
looking for
internet.
this. So you better
So
you
now
better
it's
you
just
got you
dead
got to carry
air.
the load. You got to carry the
Just
load.
dead air.
You can do it.
No, but you're the one who made me lose my place.
I didn't mean to make you lose your place.
Now you have to carry the load.
Carry the load and do the research at the same time. Yes, but anyway, there's garbage bills that are going on across the country. By the way, anti-protest bills have been domino effect, have been dominoing across the country. Many of them are written by like Alec and shit, and they're basically just copy pasted in various states. Which you mentioned the critical infrastructure garbage.
Yes, thank you for getting me back on my train tracks. You're forgiven now. So watch out for the domino effect here, because this is something that many other states will likely look at and be like, oh, I didn't realize you could even fucking go that far. Let's try it. So watch out for what's going on with your state legislatures, and be sure to continue to fight this in the sense of community organizing, being there in support of and showing up for, in particular, BIPOC folk, and yeah, that's the best defense against this bullshit is when we stand together and we not just fight, but we build together. And this is something I know I've talked about before as well, so pardon me for being repetitive, but it's super important that we not just be back on our heels with these efforts, that we also are proactive in times like these.
So here is the lost verse from the Star Spangled Banner that we do not sing. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Basically, it's saying that
Jesus,
if you are a hireling or a slave and you flee during the battle or turn against them, then nothing will save you from the gloom of the grave. You will find no refuge. So basically death to slaves and hirelings that don't fight on your side.
wow, I had no idea that was in there.
The more you know.
Yeah, no shit, right?
It's like the lost verse of this land is your land, this land is my land.
Don't know that one either.
Oh yeah, where he basically says that there shouldn't be private property, and that there's a sign on the gates that says this, don't enter, and then he says maybe this land isn't for you and me or something like that. I can look that one up in a minute too if you'd like, but this will be a weird government secrets episode of Common Sense.
Oh my gosh, you guys should totally do it like that.
Okay, so a couple of quick things before we continue with some more topics, such as 420. We're baked out of our minds. No, we're not actually. But
that would explain why I'm so loopy, but no, I'm just tired.
I feel like moments like even just the reading of the Chauvin verdict, it's like it can really make you like mentally exhausted. Just like prepping yourself for the horrors of if they find him not guilty, and deciding what a guilty actually means, if it means anything other than just for him. Like it's weird that like those moments can really exhaust you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Y'all don't forget to rest.
Yeah, and
rest is also radical.
And look out for those in your community that might need help in these trying times. So a couple of quick things. We have a live stream Sunday. Thank you to all of you who join us on the live streams.
I totally just thought of ice cream. I was like, we do?
We have ice cream Sundays? Is that what you thought I said?
No, I thought you said we have live stream Sundays, and I was like, is that like a special live Dude, people are going to think that I'm high. I'm not. I'm just tired and therefore craving like sweets, and I just totally thought of like a delicious...
Hey, folks, I realize we're on a podcast, but we have ice cream sundaes. You don't get any, but we get to enjoy it here, and you get to listen to us munch down on some delicious, delicious ice cream.
I'm so sorry. Please continue.
So yes, live stream Sunday night. For those who have been attending, thank you so much. It's so much fun to hang out with you, chat with you. We answer your comments, all that stuff. For those who have not attended, please give it a try. You can also watch it after it's live, so it stays up. It's not just live stream, at youtube.com/momentofclarity. And this Sunday will be 8 p.m. If we have to move that, we'll email everybody. You can join the email by texting redacted to 33777. As we've said every week recently, all of the donations from that live stream go to those in need, those struggling out there who email us at commoncensored@protonmail.com. We're not talking billions of dollars. We're talking if 50 to 100 could make a real difference for you and get some food on your table, then please email there. And we also can't guarantee it to everybody, but we're doing our best. So that's how the live stream donations work. We also have a way you can support this show. You'll notice we have no ads or anything like that. We're not sponsored by anybody, so it's just you guys. And that's at liberapay.com/Lee Camp. liberapay.com/Lee Camp. Just to clear up something somebody asked about, because Patreon fucked over our last account there, which that account's still up, by the way. I'm not going to delete it, and I'll keep updating with the new episodes, but we're not doing much over there. It's now over at LiberaPay, but LiberaPay is different in that we're not going to have extra content there, and it doesn't actually host the episodes. So if you were used to getting the episodes at Patreon, you could still do that. You can also get them at leecamp.com. You can get them on YouTube. You can get them at Libsyn, and you can get
Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes.
Right. The podcast platforms also have them for free. So there's plenty of places to still get it, but liberapay.com/Lee Camp is just to become a member. Okay. Hope I cleared that up. We could
also, if you're a patron of my work, please stay.
Yes, and if you're a Patreon of Act Out, or because isn't the page called Act Out?
Yeah, patreon.com/Act Out.
So if you're a Patreon of that, a patron of that, please stay there, because Eleanor's page was not destroyed like the Common Censored page was. So.
Yes, and I need your help.
Shall we continue, and I'll give the other stuff at the end. Sound good?
Sure. So it is 4:20. We are not high. Even if it sounds like it.
My nipple's out.
Wait, what?
Is that not what you're supposed to do on 420?
I think that's Mardi Gras.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
Shit. All right. Hold on. Give me a minute. I got to put it back.
420. And I feel like it's a good time to, every day's a good day to remind folks that no one should be in jail for drugs.
Yeah.
So, and this if you've been following 420 posts and things like that, there's several different organizations that work on this issue, decriminalizing, legalizing and things like that. And I think just sharing some of those thoughts, just highlighting that for the places where it's legalized, there's still a lot of work to be done in getting the people who are already in jail for selling weed that's now legal, that were put there before it was legalized. So there is a lot of work to be done in order to ensure that these folks can get the fuck out of jail for doing something that, of course, shouldn't be illegal, but is now actually legal. And not just that, but an important, again, like circling back to the abolitionist lens, not just how do we continue the fight to decriminalize all drugs, because drugs are a public health problem, whether that's fucking alcohol, cigarettes, or cocaine.
Alcohol's my public health solution.
Well, some people say that heroin is theirs, so you know what? Whatever tickles your pickle. But it's
Are they injecting the heroin into their pickle?
I don't know. I don't have a pickle, so I don't know. So it's a public health issue, right? It's not a law enforcement issue. And of course, nothing should be a slave patrol issue, as we've already discussed, looking at this through an abolitionist lens. But also understanding that, like, how do we look at things, not just in terms of the long, the longer goals of decriminalizing all drugs, but in the interim. So, for instance, something that has been put up in Oakland, California, for instance, is the idea of giving licenses to open shops to sell weed to those who are incarcerated for selling it.
Right.
So that, because what's happened is that it's a lot of like entrepreneurs and shit that you see now opening up these like, marijuana shops and making a shit ton of cash, while the people who were incarcerated are destitute and don't have the ability to get in on the action now that it's actually fucking legal. So having these measures and thinking about how we can look at this through that through a lens of justice and decriminalization, so that the people who have been most affected by the war on drugs are the ones to be able to be put back on their feet by the shift towards legalization and decriminalization.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how many people we have listening that don't believe in just full legalization. I imagine a few, but probably not many. But I think it's an easy thing that if you don't actually analyze it, you don't actually think about it in a kind of deep and rational way, it can seem like, well, of course, a certain drug. Yeah, I think weed should be legal, but all others should be illegal or something. Like, it's easy because we grew up in this world where certain drugs are. It's like you're walking around with a zombie pill that would turn people into brain-eating monsters or something.
That's what the ads were.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that someone who's cracked out doesn't act bizarre and have a lot of problems, but like you said, these are health issues. And there's no reason it needs to be illegal. And, I remember my brother, who's a lawyer, saying something like, oh, yeah, wait till you're facing a cracked out guy who's, stealing your stuff out of your living room to tell me that it's not a problem or something. And I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm saying that person shouldn't be, first of all, stealing is illegal, so they could still be arrested for stealing. But I'm saying they shouldn't be arrested for having crack on them or having cocaine in them or having them in their system. Now, driving on it is different because you can kill people. But and if you look at the countries where they've done this, they're actually doing very well. And the number of, like, Portugal has decriminalized all drugs, and the number of overdoses in Portugal has gone from one of the most in Europe to the least or second least or something like that, once they decriminalized it. So it's like, it makes society so much better to just be like, look, yes, we can have rules and laws and things about sales and where this stuff's available, but that's different than just arresting people for fucking doing it. It's fucking ridiculous. And then you look at Big Pharma and how they're making billions on basically selling drugs. What's the fucking difference? Oh, well, one of them owns our government and one of them doesn't. Like, exactly.
And Big Pharma's working on synthetic marijuana and shit, which is just fucking abhorrent. And of course there's a huge difference in how things are prosecuted, right? So if someone has crack, which is predominantly done by black and brown folks, you get an exorbitant more amount of jail time than if you're caught with cocaine. They're both not good for you.
Well, and they're very similar drugs.
They're very similar.
But the reason those laws were passed was because the officials at the time and the cops wanted to have a reason to arrest black people for far harsher sentences than white people.
And crack, the high wears off quicker, so folks are driven to do it more, which means that you're buying more often, which means that you're easier to get caught in the act. And there's so much built into this again, like that's super fucking racist and classist. You know, cocaine is like, you see that in the movies, like, oh, the Wall Street guys are doing it and it seems kind of chic, right? But it's always just like some homeless black person who's doing crack, and you're like, but it's just like they're both fucking uppers, and meanwhile people are taking Adderall, which is legit just fucking speed, but it's prescribed. So it's
totally legal.
Chill.
Totally legal. I've seen people completely coked out, and I've seen people completely Adderalled out, and I didn't see any difference. They were behaving the same.
Yeah. So I think, like, for folks who still feel that, you know, oh, well, weed is fine, but, you know, the other ones, then you are probably blessed to not have an addictive personality, and also, you know, perhaps not affected strongly by the drivers of addiction, which are isolation, not just physical, but mental and emotional, extreme trauma, a physical pain, and of course, you know, emotional and mental pain as well. But for instance, this is why the opioid epidemic was so incredibly strong in places like West Virginia, where a lot of people do manual labor. They're isolated physically, mentally, and emotionally. Communities are ripped apart. And so you reach for the magical little pill that takes the edge off of the shittiness of your life. And that was totally legal. And
wait, what was legal?
Opioids.
Yeah, and
But
they would often lead to the street opioids, but yeah.
Right, but and that's my point. But somebody going out looking for a fix and getting heroin, that's illegal. So it's, you know, it's totally bass backwards. And, you know, to your point, Lee, I'm gonna just bring this up really quick, kind of like circling back to a point. I think, like, the issue of decriminalizing all drugs can hit people as very shocking, just like it can hit people as shocking when you say something like abolish the police, because the questions are always like, but what about, and, you know, fill in the blank with rapists and murderers.
This is a very shocking episode. We've said we said decriminalize drugs and abolish the police.
And I think it's important to consider the fact that police have not always existed, and the idea that the best we can do is a racist, capitalist murder force whose job it is to oppress us in the name of the almighty dollar, that's just bullshit. And I refuse to accept that that's the best we can do, because I know that we can do better. Well, and so the thing here is to remember that this isn't about just get rid of the police and then we'll all just fucking go at each other like a bunch of like rabid monkeys or something. The idea is that how can we address the problems that will, you know, even in a fucking great society built on justice and liberation, there will be problems. How do we address those in a way that center human rights, that center justice, and that center, you know, people's, well, I already said human rights. So the idea being that, like, okay, so if somebody is a psychopath and they kill because they find it enjoyable, well, we're not going to invite them to the co-op dinner. We're going to find a way to remove them from society without putting them in a torture chamber like our modern day prisons. And so how are we going to build these structures so that communities are safe, and so that people can, you know, live their lives, but also ensure that people who need to be, like, removed from society for whatever reason can do so in a way that is still done humanely, because our goal should not be to perpetuate the oppression, to perpetuate the torture, and the mindless sadistic punishment, but again, to center human rights. And that does mean, like, compassion has to be across the board. You can't nitpick who has the right to basic humanity. And so how do we build those structures? And the only way forward in building those structures is to abolish the ones that make that impossible. And that is police, and that is the prison industrial complex.
And imagine the amount of social engineering it took to make people think it's normal to, okay, if my neighbor's playing loud music at a certain hour, I should call guys with guns. If I can't find my dog, I should call guys with guns. If somebody rear-ended me and isn't willing to give me his insurance information, I should call guys with guns. The amount of social engineering that it took to make us think that's normal, that's even okay, but not just okay, but like expected. It's just unbelievable. And when you come out of it, when you break out of it, kind of like seeing outside the Matrix, you're kind of like, how did I live in that world? Where, I mean, I think, I don't know if I mentioned this last time or not. I know I was talking about it recently, but, I grew up accepting a lot of these things, not really questioning the police. I thought there were asshole police out there, but I didn't think the institution was a real problem. But then once you step outside of it and go, why did I think it was normal that the neighbor has loud music? I'm going to call some people with guns who, best case scenario, maybe put one of those people in jail. Right. Worst case scenario, accidentally kill one of those people or have them deported from the country. Like, how did I think that's okay or expected or right or just or anything? It's amazing. And in you're talking about having a different, once you abolish the police, you have a community system that deals with people or things like that. Imagine if we, you're in your apartment, someone's playing music, it's 2 a.m. and it's blasting so loud that not only can you not sleep, but also your dog's going nuts and your baby can't sleep or whatever else. And a lot of people in that scenario eventually call the cops. And imagine if we had a different situation, a different society where you call the neighborhood watch and they walk over and 2 or 3 people show up at the guy's door and they don't have guns and they say, hey, here's how it works here. We're kind of considerate of each other's needs. This music's too loud. Like, have a discussion with them. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, it might not always go great, but you know how it's not going to end? With someone getting shot or with someone getting locked in prison. So it's once you step outside of that kind of crazy fucking world that we're encultured into, it's really...
and it's also this sort of isolationist knee-jerk reaction. Like, so a couple of weeks ago, because I'm old now, also because I'm just gonna be honest, their music choices sucked. Like, if they were just playing Guns N' Roses...
tell what happened
No,
first.
I'm going to.
Well, you're telling us that part.
Yeah, let me tell my story. If they were just playing Guns N' Roses like all night, that'd be totally chill, but that was not the case. The neighbors were playing like really awful music. And it was like, 1:30 or something. And their door was open like to their little patio area. And I was like, you know what? And I was trying to sleep, right? Because I was like, I don't want to be the old lady. I don't want to be the old lady. I don't want to say anything. But finally went outside and I was like, hey, can you shut the door? And then this drunk guy stumbles out and he's like, okay, have a good night. And guess what he did? He closed the door. Problem solved. I get to go to sleep. They get to still listen to their shitty music, but with the door closed. Yeah. Like, not at any point was I like, you know what I need to bring into this situation? Trained murderers. Like, no, they're just like some fucking 20-year-olds that are drunk and listening to shitty music. Like, I was there. Well, I had good music taste, but I was there once. I was listening to really loud music. And it's just like, and just the idea. And then the next day I hollered down to the neighbors and I was like, hey, sorry to be the old lady. My name's Eleanor. And then I met the neighbors when they were sober and could remember who the fuck I am. But like, it's so isolationist to think of calling the cops as opposed to knocking on the door. Now I get, like, if you hear people shooting each other next door, don't go knock on the door and be like, hey, I made a bundt cake. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, the idea that if somebody's having a party and like your initial knee-jerk reaction is to call murderers, like, that's so fucking bizarre. And if you're listening to this and you're like, holy shit, that is my knee-jerk reaction, I get it. Like, we've all been there. We were all programmed this way. But understanding that that's fucked up is like how we start breaking down this programming. And so I think that's important. And now everyone knows that I'm the old lady that doesn't like to hear music at 1:30 in the morning.
All right. Well said. I think you painted the picture well.
Someone's gonna send me like a meme of me with like, "Get off my lawn."
Shall we move on to trees or Biden?
Trees, because I like trees better, but not these trees.
They're the same age.
Well, these trees are very new, so actually I think Biden's older by about 100 years.
Okay.
So what's happening is there's a push to release genetically modified trees into the wild, and
Do they have fins? I hope they have fins.
no, but basically they're supposed to be blight resistant. And so the idea is they're called D58, which I just like, why the fuck can't these things have like good names?
Yeah, couldn't they call him like Edward or something?
Edward. So, and the guise is just like with all other GMOs, is that this is an important thing that we have to do to address, the ravages of climate change, to address the fact that we've got more blight and drought and floods and all of this shit. So on the surface, they make it sound not just good, but kind of necessary. But there's a whole lot of shit happening under the surface here, and I'm just going to share this with you. This is an article that was written by Ann Peterman, who has worked very hard on this issue for the past few years. And she wrote an article about it in Truth Out. Y'all can check that out if you want to. Go to that website. So basically, the idea of pushing these out is not about basically like restoring these are chestnut trees. This is not about restoring a tree that's been decimated, which it has because fuck humans. But it's because the big companies want a foot in the door to release more GE trees, genetically engineered trees. And the idea is that instead of having these biodiverse forests, we will have specially engineered trees for the manufacture of fuels, chemicals, textiles, plastics, and other goods in quote unquote green business. So greenwashing, right? And
right.
And this, a big problem here, a big like issue that's not being discussed about this is that this is to support a massive increase in the consumption of wood. And this in turn will drive the accelerated conversion of carbon-rich native forests, which, if the way that forests work is that they store carbon. When you cut them fucking down, you release that carbon into the atmosphere.
Right.
And that's bad. So this will drive the accelerated conversion of these native forests into fast-growing plantations that do not store carbon and are basically just there to create products. So this is horrific on that level, on the sort of like consumption level. The other part of it is that we don't actually fucking know what these trees could do. Because in order to test a genetically engineered organism, you have to test it in an environment that makes sense. But trees live for so long that you couldn't possibly have enough data to know how they are going to affect the ecosystem that they're put into.
A lot of people don't realize that trees are not just a solitary thing. They are connected to their environment. They communicate with each other. A tree that is getting attacked by a certain kind of termite or something will put off a chemical signature to the other trees, and they then grow thicker bark to like prepare for the onslaught. So it's like they're talking to each other. I mean, And so on this, like on the surface, it sounds like, oh, cool, we're going to address the issue of of climate change with these genetically engineered trees. And I think, something that we talk about on the show quite frequently is nuance. I'm not saying that, science can't ever help us in these situations. I'm saying that to lean on science in this situation doesn't make any fucking sense, because you know what you could do? You could just go plant some regular fucking chestnut trees. And in fact, people are doing that.
And this article also talks about how there have been a lot of people that have been planting chestnut trees on the East Coast in order to bolster those numbers again. And they've been completely ignored by the companies that are pushing for these genetically engineered chestnut trees. They keep talking about how there's like no chestnut trees left. And so, oh my God, we really have to hurry to get these genetically engineered trees out there because there's nothing left.
Right.
And all the people standing in like a forest of chestnut trees are like, but there are.
Well, because conservation or something that just isn't profit based, it doesn't even register on their like calculus. Their math for whether the planet will survive the next 50 years has no room for just like conserving stuff, not using stuff as much, consuming less. It doesn't fit into the capitalist model. And so I've been seeing article after article recently about, they don't call it this, but basically, how do we turn capitalism green? There was just an article the other day that I might be highlighting soon in one of my live streams or something that from like CBS News about people have acted like climate change and economics can't go together. But what if climate change could be good for the economy? I mean, not climate change, but dealing with climate change could be good for the economy. And it's basically, and as someone who wants to see the planet continue to be, have a future habitable, you see that corporations are starting to talk about climate change or deal with climate change, and you're like, yay. But then you look into their solutions, and they're almost always more production, more consumption based.
Right. And this is the joke of biomass, that, we're using the wood chips that are left over from the wood industry and the production in order to create fuel. Actually, a lot of you are just cutting down forests to create quote unquote biomass. That's fucked.
And then that fuel doesn't even burn hot enough, so they throw in like chewed up tires and things to make it burn hotter. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? This is your green solution?
Right. So and I think this is another moment to tie in intersections. The Eastern Band Cherokee also came out with a statement about this issue, and the Eastern Band Cherokee Tribal Council released a resolution saying, quote, "We commit to rejecting biomass, genetically engineering the natural world, carbon trading, carbon offsets, and carbon sequestration schemes as they are false solutions to climate change." So, yeah, like all of those things that you'll hear about, like, carbon trading and, carbon offsets and all that bullshit is just greenwashing and a false solution to a problem that demands not just like proactive shifts in our economy, but shifts in how we think about our relationship to the planet, which in turn incorporates indigenous rights and indigenous perspectives and leadership on this issue. And also, perhaps most importantly, decreasing consumption. Like you'll oftentimes hear about when people are like, you can make plastic out of algae. Okay, but if you had as much algae as we consume plastic right now, that would be way too much fucking algae. Like the ecosystems aren't meant to have that much fucking algae either.
It's like 160,000 plastic bags per second globally.
Like okay. But I mean, like, if all of that was made out of fucking algae, that's not okay either.
No, I know.
Like, there's nothing.
You're right.
There's like no way to consume this much in an okay way.
In a closed system that just doesn't have that level of resources. Yeah.
So, like, we have to talk about this, like, not just in the sense that, we need sustainable solutions, but not just like, we have to understand what that means is a necessary decrease in consumption. Like, that has to be part of the conversation.
Which means evolving beyond capitalism. We need to fucking end capitalism or we will die. And that is a discussion that needs to be had on your mainstream media outlets. But of course, they can't have it. They can't discuss it. They can't even get near it. Whenever it comes up, they run in horror in the other direction. So it's amazing that we're going down this path of destroying the planet, and the only solutions they seem to be coming up with are 500,000 car charging stations. And it's like, yes, that's better than fossil fuels. That's not going to solve the core of this issue, which is that capitalism requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources, you asshole. And yes, in the initial analysis, I believe by Marx, it said you asshole.
It damn well should have. What is asshole in German?
As we wrap up here, I have found the two lost verses of This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land. But I'm not going to read them until after I tell you a few things. You can support the show at liberapay.com/LeeCamp. We're not doing extra content anymore, but you might notice that we have elongated the show from 45 or 50 minutes to closer to an hour, or sometimes over an hour. So basically, you're all getting the extra content, the extra 10 minutes. So for those of you who used to enjoy the extra content, don't feel you're missing anything. We have an 8 p.m. Eastern live stream Sunday night only at youtube.com/moment of clarity. Join us there. That's where we talk about issues, have fun with you, hang out with you, chat, whatever comments you have or topics you want us to address. That's where we do it. Eleanor's movie, which has won more awards than I can count, is at hardroadofhope.com. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. My book's at leecampbook.com. If you haven't gotten that, then you're dead to me. And
I have a screening this Saturday, April 24th. It's a screening that's going to bring together environmental organizers from across the country. So there's going to be a screening and then a discussion. If you'd like to join in with that, please email coalregions@gmail.com to get that information. And that's this Saturday, April 24th.
all right, everybody. And as we said, all the donations from the live stream go to those in need. If you are someone who could use a few bucks to help you get by, then email commentcensored@protonmail.com. We don't promise we'll have enough for everybody, but we're doing our best. So here are the lost verses of This Land Is Your Land, which, by the way, we used to sing this in school all the time. Like, we knew I feel like we sang this more than the Star Spangled Banner because nobody knew the Star Spangled Banner. But
Did you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning?
every morning.
Yeah, us too.
And there was one kid who had gotten his parents to write a permission slip that he didn't have to stand for it because I think they were atheist or something.
Oh,
and we all glared at him like, what is his problem? Him saying he was an atheist was, in my little brain, was like basically like him saying we're into Satanism. I didn't even know what it meant.
When I was older, like in high school, I stopped standing.
Did you really?
Yeah, because I was like, fuck this nonsense.
Jesus, you were radicalized at such a young age. It took me till like 21 to start waking up.
I think it was easier with the parents that I had, and also in the like extremely conservative school that I went to.
Yeah.
It was just like every fiber of me was like, fuck you.
Well, you hated them already, so one more reason for them to hate you was probably like, yeah, you fucking hate me anyway. So
I mean, it was so bad to the point that like people, when they found out that I was Jewish, like asked me what that meant. What does that mean? Like that, like as if they thought that I like.
And you said, we're in Charlotte, North Carolina. This city's owned by banks. Who do you think runs them? All right? It's my people.
Also, I take my babies medium rare.
So here are, for some odd reason, and I'll see if you can come up with the reason that these are the lost verses. I'll see if you have any insight into that. And I'm certainly not going to sing it. Couldn't do it if I tried. But was a high wall there? So he's talking about walking across America, basically, right? He says, was a high wall there that tried to stop me. A sign was painted, said private property. But on the backside, it didn't say nothing. Oh. God bless America for me. This land is made for you and me. So that one's talking about private property, which can't criticize private property in our capitalist utopia, right? And then the final verse we don't sing, or at least didn't when I was in school. One bright sunny morning in the shadow of the steeple, by the relief office, I saw my people. As they stood hungry, I stood there wondering if God blessed America for me. This land was made for you and me.
Good
So
one.
so it concludes with basically undermining everything he said. Like,
Yep.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the fact that so many people are struggling in this country means that this is not the blessed land for me.
It's interesting. I hadn't heard that last one, but when you read the first omitted line, it did ring a bell. But you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of when like people play Born in the USA and they're like, yeah, Born in the USA. And I'm like, yeah, listen to the fucking lyrics, you twat. All right.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week, or maybe Sunday if you come hang out with us.
Yeah, come hang out with us. YouTube.com/moment of clarity or on Rockfin at something.
Rockfin.com/Lee Camp.
That one too.
Keep fighting.
Act out.